Sonic is an icon, and he always will be, with having his own movies, games, comics, and even collaborations that can shock a few or more fans. There is a lot to talk about for the Blue Blur. Most notably, with the release of all the Sonic media coming out, there are so many new fans who enter the picture, and this is where the Sonic games themselves have to step in. For most of us longtime fans, we are kinda used to the state that Sonic has forced our fans to be accustomed to. With there being no mainline Sonic game since Sonic Forces in 2017, this led many Sonic fans, and myself included, to let out our thoughts on the franchise, what it meant to us, and how we feel about Sonic in general. Even most of us being somewhat afraid or straight up not trusting of what Sonic team would be able to develop for us. And to add more insult to injury, we had games like Sonic Origins or Colors Ultimate, which ended up being pretty mediocre, and sadly these seem to be the only options game-wise for new fans. But for the most part, we've been waiting a long time for the Sonic game that would be its next big break, and I think that most confidently that this is the game for me, and hopefully for all of you. So without any more delays and whatnot, let's talk about Sonic Frontiers. Before we get into actual talk for Sonic Frontiers, let's discuss some of the background for this game. So up till about last year's Sonic Central showcase, we got our first look at Sonic Frontiers with it being no more than a 40-second clip of Sonic just running. And god, I didn't expect this game to be what I thought it was. Throughout the time in between this trailer and the release of Sonic Frontiers, many leaks started to happen, and even having this game have a little beta title like Sonic Rangers. But when we move up to about early June 2022, this is when we got our first look at gameplay shown on the IGN channel, and this is where most of us got an idea and a taste of what Sonic Frontiers had in store. Instead of having this game be your traditional boost game, which was the status quo for Sonic games up to this point, we had Sonic Frontiers, which presented itself as an open world Sonic game, which was an entirely new concept and definitely super exciting. Furthermore, after the release of the Sonic Frontiers teaser, we got some more stuff like more gameplay looks, some music to listen to, and awesome animations to just do some stuff prequel wise. Along with this, some people at conventions like at EGX also got to try and play the game early too, which is awesome. I mean, past that there isn't a lot of stuff because we didn't see much Frontier stuff apart from the small stuff until June. Also, out of my curiosity, I did look it up and see that the development for Sonic Frontiers took about 5 years to produce, and this was showing the immense amount of effort that was put into this game. And funnily enough, Forces took 6 years to develop, and well, we all know how that game turned out. Going back as far as 1998, with Sonic Adventure being the closest to a somewhat open world kind of thing going on to what we have in Sonic Frontiers, in my opinion, Sonic Team knocked this entire part out of the ballpark. The visuals are beautiful and very expansive, and even remind me of other games like The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild. The world feels very open and leads you to feel like you can take advantage of the speed Sonic has and you can go anywhere. Along with the game itself not only having some of the most amazing visuals I have seen in a Sonic game since games like Sonic Unleashed or Sonic Generations. It's so shocking how sometimes I was actually looking at this game and looking at the entire world, and I actually forgot that I was playing a Sonic game. Which is a good thing, by the way. With all the cutscenes, they are all portrayed in a much better fashion than previously before, and without even touching anything story related, all of the dialogue is a lot better, and the characters themselves are portrayed in a much better fashion and seem to be improved upon to what was previously shown in prior games. And with the topic of story afoot, I want to go ahead and give this nice and clear spoiler warning. And yes, I'm well aware by the time this video comes out that most people might already know the story of Sonic Frontiers, but I'm just playing it safe. So in the case you don't know it, if you need to, now would be a good time to click off the video, go play the game, and come back later. Alright, cool. Are we all good? Good. Our story for this game actually doesn't have any major indicators of how much time has passed since Dr. Eggman's world domination in Sonic Forces. Eggman, being first up, finds one of the ruins of the Starfall Islands and tries to take control of it with this new, I don't know what, weapon, I guess. Anyways, it backfires as most things do, and this results in him being captured in cyberspace. Moving forward, Sonic, Tails, and Amy, and not Knuckles because he had his own little thing going on in the prequel animation, all head for the Starfall Islands due to the energy of the Chaos Emeralds being located. However, on their way there, they all end up falling through a portal and end up in what we now know as cyberspace. Sonic, being Sonic, of course escapes with no issues. However, he ends up unfortunately leaving all of his friends in a digitized state of limbo because They all can't escape apparently, which I guess makes sense because they're not fast, but whatever. And this now will require Sonic to explore the multiple Starfall islands and collect the Chaos Emeralds and memory tokens to free Amy, Knuckles, and Tails. Throughout Sonic's adventure through this unfamiliar, uncharted territory, Sonic encounters what happens to be one of Dr. Eggman's newest creations, of Sage. The best way to describe her is a glitchy little girl who is immensely powerful and can control a lot of the old technology on the islands. Eventually, when Sonic is able to free one of his friends, he absorbs the energy that was once used to keep his friends in a glitchy prison. One of my favorite things about this new story when comparing it to many other Sonic stories was the characterization of this game. Amy, mainly known to be Sonic's biggest sim, rather seems to be more akin to how she is in the IDW comics, being a lot more of a supportive friend and character, rather than an annoying nuisance for Sonic to constantly be running away from. Still, she keeps her charm of showing love for the world, and it genuinely is a lot better than how she was portrayed in the past. With Knuckles, rather than him being far too silly and goofy, he is actually back in the role of some seriousness, while keeping a part of the silliness that most seem to either have a love-hate relationship with. One of the other best things about Knuckles and Sonic's relationship here is how it's portrayed from rivals to a lot more of two brothers bonding, and one of my favorite cutscenes in the game talks about how Knuckles feels on the ruins, the Master Emerald, and his ancestors, and for Sonic to be the one to open his eyes on the whole situation is really fitting, and I think it's perfect, and this entire cutscene encapsulates how I think Sonic and Knuckles should have been handled as friends. Lastly, with the characterization for Tails, I think it's done the best. Looking back at how Tails was handled as just Sonic's sidekick, to his own hero, to falling back into a very shameful state, which we saw him in things such as Sonic Forces, I really like the teacher and student relationship Sonic and Tails have while keeping the brotherly vibe along with it. One moment that really hit me hard was when Tails actually asked Sonic if he was a burden. But in his own nature, Sonic shows a lot of examples from the past of Tails being his own hero, in that there isn't anything wrong with needing help from time to time. Another great moment from Tails was the realization from Tails himself was that he needed to go on his own and become his own hero, and this just hit me hard from realizing that Sonic and Tails are going to be split up for a while so that Tails can grow up and become a hero just like Sonic. My point with these three moments from each of Sonic's friends is to point out how they went from characters that I couldn't take seriously to some that were able to make me tear up and care for them. Going from Amy's passion, Knuckles' hard-as-nails attitude, and Tails' fly-high persona, they are each all approved upon from what previous iterations, which, if I'm being honest, made me dislike them, made me actually do the opposite and love these characters like I should have been in the first place. When heading back to Sonic himself, I love that he himself is portrayed in a much better fashion, and gives me a heavy recollection of how Sonic's characterization was handled in games like Sonic Unleashed or Sonic and the Black Knight, being some of Sonic at his best in my opinion. Sonic is also once again voiced by Roger Craig Smith, but it doesn't really seem like that since his voice direction is amazing, and I think that this is honestly Roger's best performance as the Blue Blur. For those who don't know, Jason Griffith is my favorite actor for Sonic, as I think he was the perfect mix of, I guess, kind of older while keeping the same go-go attitude that Ryan Drummond gave to the table. And, you know, that's not to diss him because he was amazing as well, but Jason just had something about the way he voiced Sonic. And although I'm gonna admit Roger isn't anywhere up there for me, I gotta give credit where it's due and have to acknowledge how much of a good job Roger did voicing Sonic. Continuing more with the actual story, eventually Sonic ends up taking in too much of this cyber energy and it ends up in a cyber corruption, which makes him split between realities, which sounds dangerous, and Sonic basically fucking dies. So yeah, there's that. Thankfully, Sonic's friends come in to save him, and they all allow Sonic the strength to defeat the final Titan that is the Supreme, once Sage convinces Dr. Eggman to make a quick alliance once more with Sonic. They seem to be doing that quite a lot. You know, it's just a little weird. Hope they don't make Eggman a good guy. That's like... anyway. See, up to this point, I consider this to be one of the best Sonic stories, but they really did mess it up in the end. But don't worry, I'll touch more on that later. With Sage sacrificing herself and Sonic being able to make it on land, we see that the journey is over with not only Sonic, Tails, and Knuckles and Amy all ready to move on with their lives, but that they also all kind of moved on to do their own things. Eggman also seemed kind of sad with the loss of his daughter, but with her being a creation, he's able to bring her back to life, along with the symbol from the first ever trailer, all the way back in 2021, representing Sage herself and the Coco's satisfaction with their unfinished business, but again, I'll touch more on that later. There was also a lot more flashbacks to talking about how the Chaos People, which is what the Cocos used to be, and how everything changed from them. It does show a lot more insight into what cyberspace stands for them and their people. Overall, the story is one of the best things to come out of Sonic Frontiers. And with the ending being slightly tarnished, it's overall really well written, and is personally a much better attempt at mixing a darker toned story with many lighthearted moments. I can only hope that future Sonic games are able to encapsulate the amount of effort that was put into the story, and just improve upon it for future Sonic games. Okay, let's just get this out of the way. Say whatever you want about any of the Sonic games, whether it be Sonic and the Secret Rings, Sonic 06, or just Sonic Forces. The soundtrack always slaps, and this game is no different. The lead composer for the soundtrack of Sonic Frontiers is the very talented Tomoya Otani, who also worked on many other Sonic game original soundtracks such as Forces, Unleashed, Colors, and many more. Sonic Frontiers has such great music, and I'm not one to go in depth about any kind of musical talk by any means. I can say for sure that without a doubt, this is one of my favorite soundtracks that I have heard from the Sonic franchise in a long time, and this is one of the ones that I was able to add to a playlist of mine. The only other games having me do that were the adventure games, Black Knight, and Unleashed. What I love most about the music in this game is that I feel it always matches the tone of whatever you're doing. From the open world feeling so immersive with the calm, fresh breath of air music of Kronos Island, or just the sandy feeling of Ares Island, the music can always match what the game is presenting itself with. One of my favorite tracks is also the Big Fishy minigame, which, for one reason, I will mention I am a sucker for lo-fi music. So to see some put into an original Sonic game and having original Sonic lo-fi, I was in love. I spent hours playing the fishing minigame with Big, and I wasn't even tired from the amazing music that plays. The Cyberspace levels themselves remind me a lot of the Sonic Forces soundtrack, and I don't entirely hate it, and it can sound really good at some points. For example, in Green Hills Cyberspace 2-6, it has one of my favorite cyberspace themes, making me very excited to traverse through the stage as fast as I can to get the S rank. Furthermore, the music for the mini-bosses all sound great and has a very threatening aura that can be matched to a boss that you are fighting. And there is something so exciting about seeing Sonic fight these huge enemies like the Asura boss fight and just have this amazing music to back up the adrenaline you'll get from playing these bosses. Even much more lighthearted stuff like the minigame music goes incredibly hard, having a very jazzy theme with it, and making it in general sound amazing. And I know I've been using it for the transition of each part of the video, but I cannot be the only one who's in love with Sonic's little dance every time he gets a Chaos Emerald. It's so damn cool. Last but not least, but for the Titans themselves, these are huge dramatic fights where Sonic goes into his super form to fight something that is almost 1,000 times his own size. With these songs, you will have a very rock, metal style music theme, and god, it just gives me such a major adrenaline rush that excites me to kick the crap out of these Titans. Two of my favorite Titan themes have to be Undefeatable, which may be a theme which you may have heard a lot of by now, and the other one being Find Your Flame, where you fight the Chaos Island's Titan Knight. I mean bro, with this theme playing, how can you not freak out when you see Sonic slice Knight up with his own sword? God, I love this game. Sonic Frontiers changes drastically gameplay-wise when we take a look at the prior Sonic games, and the kind of style going for each of the games. Most follow the formula of the boost games like Sonic Unleashed, Sonic Colors, and Sonic Generations. But for this game, we have the open world, or as advertised by Sonic Team themselves, the open zone gameplay. As Sonic gets to explore and traverse on his own, there are a total of 5 islands in Sonic Frontiers, and I want to get down into the nooks and crannies of each of the Starfall islands and talk about what they each get into. Starting off with Kronos Island, this is the first of 5 for the Starfall Islands. Here you will encounter many new types of enemies, and this is where you can familiarize yourself with how the general gameplay works. Sonic will have one friend to be saved out of Amy, Knuckles, and Tails per island. The friend that will be saved on this island will be Amy herself. See, unlike Sonic, they're all trapped in cyberspace, and like mentioned before, Sonic, being Sonic, was able to escape. However, his friends weren't as lucky. To free Amy, Sonic absorbs cyber energy, which at first helps him not only free his friends, but also gave him a small boost in power. I'm sure that's not going to have any worse side effects later. On this island, as you traverse, you'll be collecting things known as memory tokens, which on this island are in the shape of a heart. See, due to Sonic not freeing his friends in the same way as he freed himself, they are left in the state of limbo and are in this digitized state. Sonic will be required to collect the Chaos Emeralds, collect memory tokens, and explore the island to help his friends return to their regular form and return to a sense of normalcy. The way the Chaos Emeralds are located and collected is through the Cyberspace levels, though we'll get more into this later. As you progress on the island, you will encounter Amy, Tails, or Knuckles with their own small side story in which one main creature, a part of the species known as Cocos, needs help from the said friend. Essentially, these creatures that represent the ancestors are the original people who used to inhabit the islands until whatever it is attacked the islands, causing them all to disappear and be wiped out. Amy deals with a Coco who is asking for her help to reunite her with her lost love before it is too late, and this is very fitting for Amy to help out with. So once that is completed, you get a beautiful cutscene where we see these Cocos in their true form resemble something such as Chaos from Sonic Adventure 1. After the cutscene plays, it is almost compared to unfinished business being completed by the Cocos. And although they don't necessarily die, but they're now in a state of peace, and we see the symbol from that original teaser representing that. Also, yeah, they're definitely dead. Along with this main side quest story, Sonic will be able to get the 2 other Chaos Emeralds by doing these stories. Once all the 7 Chaos Emeralds are collected, Sonic is able to take on the main Titan of the island, which is essentially the big bad of each island. He also did try to take it on before, but you know, he got his ass beat. When Sonic grabs the final Chaos Emerald, which funny enough is on top of the Titan themselves, you get to transform into Super Sonic, which is handled a little differently since we haven't seen Super Sonic since 2011 in Sonic Generations. When transformed, it's more or less an improvement of what Sonic is already able to do. He's able to use the same moves, counter, do whatever you want as Sonic could have done in his base form. However, keep in mind that Super Sonic's gameplay, just like always, is ring based, so before taking on a Titan, you might want to max out your ring count. Once the Titan is defeated, the seal will be broken and access to the next following island will become available. Ares Island is personally my favorite island, so let's just get into it. Ares Island compared to Kronos Island is obviously very different when just looking at the environment. The friend that will be saved here will be Knuckles. Same as before, you will immediately get to start up by doing whatever you want. I normally immediately go searching for memory tokens, which have their own design, in this case being a medal. When freeing Knuckles, his side story will also be dealing with a Coco this time, but not only that, his entire mentality on watching the Master Emerald. It's really interesting to see because for so long we've seen Knuckles as nothing more than a goofball who couldn't even be taken seriously in this game, and let alone not even talking about the Master Emerald almost like at all. So we get to see a different approach to that in Sonic Frontiers. Even in this game, Sonic gets to be the one to open his eyes to the entire dilemma. Now, regarding to the Coco Knuckles takes care of, it's more or less an army that was separated that he alone brings together. And after many trials and seeing them finally return to the Chaos looking form, all the Cocos go out together as an army, with Knuckles and Sonic helping out the army Cocos attain peace, while kind of keeping in mind that they aren't able to save them, but to an extent help them. I do like that in this game, although we can't really change their fates of the Cocos, we can essentially help them attain peace, and that's something really nice to think about. Right before Sonic leaves to fight the Titan, Knuckles has a new perspective on the Master Emerald, and with all the Chaos Emeralds once again collected, because I forgot to mention once you enter a new island, the emeralds separate to not make the entire game an entire cakewalk, the final emerald will once again be on top of the Titan, and once defeated, Sonic is able to travel to the 3rd island. Now this is where I kind of struggled a bit, so before we get into this section, I want to give a shout out to my good buddy TheSonicNinja, who helped me out because I'm a bit of a clueless idiot and couldn't understand anything, so I check him out. His Twitter will be in the description down below. So for Chaos Island, the environment here looks a lot more akin to a rocky landscape, especially with the huge volcano on the island. Along with this, as Sonic stands still, it's easy to see that this cyber energy he's absorbing is starting to take a toll on him. Moving forward for this island, you will be saving Sonic's best friend, Tails. For his memory tokens to be fitting for Tails, they are wrenches and they will help you progress the story. As for the side story, Tails learns to face his fear of being a burden to Sonic and growing up a bit. But when moving to his Coco that he takes care of and revolves around, it's a little mechanic Coco who used to develop weapons for the ancients before they were wiped out due to a war. Tails helps his Coco by loading an ancient weapon technology to help their leader. When the ancient weapons are finally loaded thanks to Tails, this will give the Coco the closure it needed to move on to the next life. And once more, we see the symbol, which seems to again represent the unfinished business of the Coco and the closure that they receive from finishing it. Again, with the 7 Chaos Emeralds all collected once more, the last one being attained from the Titan, Sonic is able to move on to the following island. By this point, Sonic is exhausted, and this can be seen alone by his idle animation. Rhea Island is the shortest, and I'm not entirely sure what it is about it, but this island seems to be graphically and visually the most appealing. Unlike the other islands, this one resembles Kronos Island and doesn't have its own environment. The main mission for this island is to scale and climb 6 different towers to deactivate them and prevent the looming threat. The cyber corruption also becomes a lot more lethal to the point where Sonic fucking dies. Yikes. Thankfully, Sonic's friends free him from being in this state of a cyber corrupted limbo, and with Sage's advice, joins forces with Eggman to conquer the final island. So without much content for these islands apart from the scaling of towers for this island and more story lore, it somehow looks the nicest in my opinion, but it seems to be the most useless. With the final island also looking a lot like Chronos, you can see they ran out of budget money here. We are back to following the formula of searching for memory tokens, but this time being for Sage. Although not needing to be saved due to not being captured, she requires them to progress the story, and to get Sonic ready to fight the final Titan. The memory tokens are also straight up just Amy's, but to be honest, the entire island is just a copy and paste of both memory tokens and just the environment itself of Chronos. When once more all 7 Chaos Symbols are collected, this time having the last one being delivered to you from Eggman himself, the final Titan is able to be fought, and once defeated, if you are playing on hard mode, which I heavily recommend considering this game is easy as shit on hard anyways, you can fight the true final boss. Sonic goes up to space with Sage now controlling the just defeated Titan, and you get the most interesting final boss, Galaga! Wait, hold on, I gotta make sure I'm seeing this right. No fucking way. Yeah, the final boss is just a huge Galaga fight. It's super underwhelming if anything, but it's ever so slightly challenging, taking me only 3 attempts to beat it, and that's only because I pulled an all-nighter trying to beat this game, and by this point it was like 5 in the morning. And that's Sonic Frontiers for you. However, I'm not done there, so now we're going to be chatting about other stuff like the controls, the Titan fights, Cyberspace, and yes, the fishing. Sonic Frontiers, just like any other Sonic game, has a gimmick. Some of you may remember me talking about how Unleashed had the Werehog, Colors, the Wisps, Generations, Classic Sonic, and with Forces the OC. So what does Frontiers have? The entirety of Cyberspace. Cyberspace is a short 1 to 2 minute levels that are akin to those said stages of said listed Sonic games. So to make it clear, the entirety of Cyberspace is just the boost formula as we knew it before. That alone should say how big this game is. So when getting into the control scheme for Sonic, he has 2 different control variations, the open zone variation and the cyberspace variation. So let's start with the open zone. With the open zone gameplay, Sonic controls like you think he would, retaining his iconic boost, homing attack, and lightspeed dash, but they also make some great addition to Sonic's versatile moveset. Returning from Sonic Mania, the drop dash makes its first introduction into 3D. And not only that, but Sonic has his combat implemented into his moveset. Last time this was like in Sonic Unleashed with the Werehog, but unlike his Werehog state, he actually doesn't need to transform into someone to kick someone else's ass. Furthermore, I prefer the way the controls are laid out onto the controller. The boost previously being on things such as the square button or the X button, now being on R2 or RB, which I believe works a lot better and feels more natural. The combat is also a lot of fun when fighting mini-bosses and other enemies. One new ability Sonic has in this game is the Psy Loop. It is a technique used by Sonic where he can create an updraft by circling around a target, but it has other uses like drawing an infinite symbol which will give you a temporary infinite boost, or drawing a circle and closing it can give you rings. And since there isn't a cooldown, you're actually able to spam the hell out of this. So whenever I show you any kind of gameplay, you'll see that before I fought a Titan, I would spam this and make sure that my rings were at max before fighting a Titan so that I don't have to worry about a ring count during the fight. The last few things to mention is how regardless of your progress, you can always explore and find new enemies to defeat, similar to the Insomniac Spider-Man games where just swinging around could help you find a crime to stop. Also, in this game, the boost itself is not a gauge or a meter, but rather an equivalent to a stamina bar for running like used in The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild, or oxygen when underwater like in Super Mario Galaxy. Final thing to talk about is after a while of exploring, there is an event known as the Starfall, where all chest signs, enemies, and everything for exploration is reset so you can do it again for need be. This offers a lot of incentive for replayability, and this little event is akin to the Blood Moon of Breath of the Wild, resetting enemies, collectibles, and more. Although I briefly touched upon the combat, Sonic has his own skill tree, meant purely to upgrade combat and open moves that Sonic is able to use. See, Sakurai? This is what Sonic's Smash Bros. Moveset should have been. One awesome feature I like is any of the moves that Sonic can use, Super Sonic is also able to use. Sonic also has 4 upgradable stats, being his speed, ring count, defense, and combat. His defense and combat can be upgraded via red and blue seeds, while his ring count and speed can be upgraded by collecting lost Coco found throughout each island and getting returned to the Elder Coco, who has a painfully slow upgrading process. See, fun fact, I didn't know how to upgrade shit, so by the time I was on the final island and decided to upgrade his speed, I was there for over 30 minutes just clicking X and timing it, watching this little guy jump and open his mouth. The final thing to mention combat wise is the awesome counter that Sonic has, which when used can make Sonic perform some awesome moves like straight up spin dashing into enemies. Again, see Sakurai? This is what Sonic's moveset should have been in Super Smash Bros. When moving into actual mini-boss fights and Titan fights, you can encounter mini-bosses by simply just exploring the island, and these ones are able to be fought as many times as you'd like, offering a Cyberspace portal gear when defeated. When it comes to the Titan fights, these are the big bad of each island, apart from Rhea, and these are the bosses that are so big that Super Sonic is required to defeat them. These fights are huge climactic fights that can unfortunately be played once per playthrough, so make sure you enjoy them when going through them. The music is super upbeat, matching the vibe of the fight, and if you thought something like Perfect Chaos or Perfect Dark Gaia was awesome, you'll love these Titan fights. Moving on to Cyberspace, these levels are very akin to previous Sonic games, following the level design of the Boost games. The level design for these stages will immediately bring you back to what feels like Sonic's roots up to this point, having some of the Cyberspace stages straight up rip off the level design while keeping the assets of each stage be between 4 designs for Green Hill, Chemical Plant, Sky Sanctuary, and this city level. The Cyberspace levels are able to be accessed via portal gears from chest signs, mini bosses, or Big's fishing game. Don't worry, we'll get there. Each stage has 4 challenges, being beating the stage within a certain time limit, finishing the stage with a certain amount of rings, collecting all 5 red rings in each level, and, well, just beating the stage. Doing all these challenges will get you the keys, and these keys are what is used to progress the story by unlocking the Chaos Emerald for Sonic to collect. So, we got to it. Let us talk about the best part of Sonic Frontiers. The fishing. Shout out to my friend Kenny. See, some of you think I'm bullshitting, but I'm not. This entire minigame is broken. Let me tell you how. Not only do my ears cream when I hear all this damn lo-fi music, but you can fish for a long ass time if you have a lot of purple coins. And with fishing, you can get portal gears, memory tokens, and the Cocos to upgrade Sonic stats and even keys. So this entire minigame makes the whole game redundant, because if you were to grind the hell out of the fishing game and purple coins, you would never have to touch Cyberspace nor do any side missions and just progress the story. So, in conclusion, Big the Cat is a fucking W. Thank you for coming to my TED Talk. While yes, Sonic Frontiers is an amazing game and gives a fresh new take on the Sonic series, it's not to say this game doesn't have its fair share of problems. For example, the difficulty in this game is non-existent. I've had this complaint ever since the release of Sonic Colors. The games are just too easy. Even with having the hard mode enabled, I basically breezed through this game. It was fun, sure, yeah, but the difficulty is something that can make completing the game a lot more rewarding. Past that point, there are a lot more mechanics that can easily be abused, such as the fishing minigame, or even just the combat itself. As for the fishing game, I shouldn't be able to collect every collectible just by fishing. Maybe part of the collectibles, but not all of them. The combat itself I think is a great attempt back at bringing Sonic to having a combat, since the last time was in the Werehog, but his moves are basically able to be spammed. There is no cooldown, so like right here in this example, without trying, I can just spam the zigzag move and there is nothing stopping me from doing so. The side loop is also able to be abused, like spamming circles so you can get a lot of rings in a very quick manner. There should have been a feature where like the more you do it, the fewer rings you get, and the drift in Cyberspace fucking sucks. God, I don't know how they messed that part up. That was like the one thing I was looking forward to. Along with some of the stages also being lackluster in Cyberspace and not being as fun as I had originally hoped. Oh, and fuck 1-2. If you know, you know. Next, it is a literal crime that the Titan bosses can be fought only once. Sonic Team should have done something like Zelda Ocarina of Time 3DS where Sonic could sleep and refight the bosses, which is a fun idea. One last thing I can touch upon is how the final boss is such a letdown. And while not necessarily being a bad thing by any means, it's such a letdown from having this amazing game and with a Galaga game. But don't let these few things I listed change anything from the main point that this game is amazing. Sonic Frontiers does a few things in not the best way, but it does so much justice for what we can expect for the Sonic series. So, as we near the end of this video, I want to let out a few final thoughts as to what I think of Sonic Frontiers. Ever since the release of Sonic Forces, I won't lie, I did lose a bit of my hope for the Sonic franchise, but Sonic Frontiers reignited a fire inside of me which made me love the franchise, which over time, since I was a kid, have come to grow and love. Sonic Frontiers with its open zone gameplay I think is ambitious, yes, but it has many ideas that I truly believe were executed pretty well, and enough to the point where Sonic was extremely exciting again. I have seen longtime fans or even new ones online compliment how much better this game just seems and looks in general. Just going from the story being a lot more well written thanks to Ian Flynn, or just the graphical presentation being a lot better than most previous Sonic games, and just the music being amazing to listen to as always, this game just keeps delivering on greatness even with the few ideas which don't completely work. Despite some of its ideas falling flat, Sonic Frontiers is a bold open world adventure that mostly succeeds in shaking up the Sonic formula, and for that reason alone, I am so thankful for the incredible impact of Sonic Frontiers. Hey, and welcome to the end of the video. This video isn't entirely late or anything, I was a little busy, but getting back on track, I want to thank you guys always for the constant support. I want to apologize for my, I guess, not as much usage of my camera. I have a thing going on with my main camera I use normally right now, so I'm using my webcam, so I kind of did what I could. I apologize. I would have loved to use my camera more, as it's honestly one of my favorite parts of making videos, is just seeing I guess my live action segments work out into the video. As always, links to my socials like my Twitter, Twitch, and Discord will be in the description down below if that interests you. As always, thank you guys so much for the constant support. I would really appreciate it though if you guys would leave a like and subscribe. I've worked really hard on this video and I hope that many of you guys enjoyed it. So, without any more rambling or any more of my bullshit, thank you guys so much for watching and have a good one. I can't wait to edit this video and think about how much I want to dive from the amount of times I fucked up a line.